Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue living as someone who happened to things, or you can become someone who makes things happen. The difference between these two states of being isn't what someone else did to you. It's what you choose to do with what happened to you. Who here has ever found themselves checking their phone, hoping for a message that never comes? Who has ever driven past a certain neighborhood, just hoping to catch a glimpse of someone who discarded you like yesterday's newspaper? Raise your hand if you've ever crafted the perfect response in your mind to a conversation that will never happen. You know what that behavior really is? It's giving your power away to someone who probably isn't even thinking about you while you're thinking about them. It's living in a prison where you hold the key but keep choosing to stay locked inside. I want to tell you about Sarah. She spent 18 months of her life planning her entire day around someone else's schedule. She'd wake up wondering if he'd call. She'd choose her route to work based on whether she might see his car. She'd spend her lunch breaks analyzing text messages like a forensic scientist examining evidence. For 18 months, she lived as a satellite orbiting around someone else's sun. Then one Tuesday morning, she looked in the mirror and asked herself a question that changed everything. When did I stop being the main character in my own life? That question hit her like lightning. She realized she'd been living as a supporting actor in someone else's story. She'd been waiting for permission to be happy. She'd been waiting for validation to feel worthy. She'd been waiting for someone else to decide her value. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that we need someone else to complete us. The most destructive myth we believe is that our worth depends on how someone else treats us. The most damaging story we accept is that we're victims of circumstances beyond our control. But here's what Sarah discovered that Tuesday morning, and what you need to understand right now. You are not half a person looking for your other half. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not a victim waiting for a rescue. You are a complete human being with the power to create, to choose, and to transform every aspect of your life starting today. How many of you have spent time trying to figure out why someone treated you poorly? How many hours have you invested trying to decode their behavior, understand their motives, or fix their problems? Show of hands, who here has ever thought, if I can just be perfect enough, patient enough, understanding enough, they'll finally love me the way I deserve? That's not love. That's negotiation. That's trying to earn something that should be freely given. That's living in the economy of scarcity instead of the abundance that is your birthright. When someone shows you through their actions that they don't value you, believe that. When someone demonstrates through their choices that you're not a priority, accept it. When someone treats you like an option while you treat them like a priority, stop. Not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. The relationship that matters most is the one you have with yourself. The opinion that counts most is the one you hold about yourself. The love that sustains you is the love you give yourself. Sarah made a decision that Tuesday morning that transformed everything. She decided to stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life and start directing her own. She decided to stop being a character in his story and start being the author of hers. She threw away the phone number she'd memorized but never used. She deleted the social media profiles she'd been checking obsessively. She stopped driving by places where she might see him. But more importantly, she started showing up for her own life. She enrolled in the art class she'd been postponing. She took the weekend trip she'd been planning. She called the friend she'd been neglecting. She started treating herself like someone worth caring about. And something remarkable happened. As she began investing in herself instead of obsessing over someone else, she began to change. Not for anyone else, but for herself. She became more interesting because she was interested in things again. She became more attractive because she was attracted to life again. She became more valuable because she valued herself again. Within 6 months, Sarah was unrecognizable, not because she'd changed her appearance, but because she'd changed her relationship with herself. She'd stopped being someone who needed external validation and became someone who generated internal satisfaction. The narcissist who had consumed her thoughts for 18 months. He reached out. Suddenly, after months of silence, he was interested again. But here's the beautiful part of the story. Sarah no longer cared. She discovered something more powerful than his attention. She'd discovered her own attention. She'd found something more valuable than his approval. She'd found her own approval. She'd experienced something more satisfying than his love. She'd experienced her own love. When you stop chasing, you become worth chasing. When you stop begging for attention, you become worth attention. When you stop settling for crumbs, you become worth the whole feast. But this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen because you hope for it, or wish for it, or wait for it. It happens because you choose it, and work for it, and commit to it every single day. The price of staying small is enormous. The cost of remaining a victim is everything you could have become. The expense of waiting for someone else to validate you is the life you could have been living while you were waiting. Every day you spend focused on someone who doesn't value you is a day you're not focused on becoming someone who does. Every hour you invest in trying to change someone else is an hour you're not investing in changing yourself. Every minute you spend seeking external approval is a minute you're not building internal confidence. The years pass whether you grow or not. Time moves forward whether you move forward or not. Life happens whether you participate in it or not. The question is, will you be the same person a year from now, still waiting for someone else to give you permission to be happy? Or will you be someone who took responsibility for your own happiness and created a life so fulfilling that the opinions of others become irrelevant? The choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be. You can continue living as someone who reacts to what others do, or you can become someone who acts according to your own values. You can keep being someone who waits for life to happen, or you can become someone who makes life happen. Right now, some of you are thinking, but you don't understand my situation. You don't know how badly I was treated. You don't know how much I loved them. You don't know how hard this is. You're right. I don't know your specific situation, but I know this. Every person who has ever transformed their life had to face the same choice you're facing right now. Every person who has ever broken free from the prison of seeking external validation had to do the same work you need to do. Every person who has ever become unshakable had to start from exactly where you are today. The work of transformation isn't comfortable, it isn't easy, it isn't quick, but it's worth it. Because on the other side of this work is a version of yourself that doesn't need anyone else's permission to be magnificent. On the other side of this work is a person who attracts healthy relationships because they've become healthy themselves. On the other side of this work is someone who commands respect because they've learned to respect themselves. On the other side of this work is a human being who is truly free. The foundation of this freedom isn't built overnight. It's constructed one choice at a time, one habit at a time, one day at a time. It requires understanding the principles that govern personal growth and applying them consistently, regardless of how you feel in the moment. These principles work like farming. You can't plant seeds today and expect a harvest tomorrow. You can't work the soil once and expect it to remain fertile forever. You can't ignore your crops for months and wonder why they died. Success in transforming yourself follows the same natural laws that govern everything else in life. The farmer who wants a magnificent harvest doesn't focus on the harvest. He focuses on preparing the soil, planting the right seeds, watering consistently, and protecting the young plants from weeds and pests. What are you planting in the soil of your mind every day? What seeds are you watering with your attention? What weeds are you allowing to grow in the garden of your thoughts? Most people plant seeds of doubt and water them with worry. They cultivate criticism and fertilize it with comparison. They sow seeds of resentment and tend them with repeated mental rehearsals of how they've been wronged. Then they wonder why their life doesn't bloom. The quality of your external life is a direct reflection of the quality of your internal life. Show me someone who thinks defeated thoughts, and I'll show you someone living a defeated life. Show me someone who feeds their mind excellence, and I'll show you someone whose life reflects excellence. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't pretending problems don't exist. This is understanding that your mind is either your greatest asset or your greatest liability, and the choice of which it becomes is entirely yours. Starting tomorrow morning, your transformation begins with what you do in the first 30 minutes after you wake up. Not what happens to you, but what you do. Not what others demand of you, but what you choose for yourself. The most successful people in every field share one common characteristic. They have morning routines that set the tone for their entire day. They don't check their phones immediately upon waking. They don't begin their day by reacting to other people's priorities. They start by investing in themselves. Here's what that looks like practically. You wake up, and before you do anything else, you spend 10 minutes in silence. Not meditation, not prayer unless that's your practice, just silence. You sit quietly and let your mind settle. You remind yourself of who you're becoming, not who you were yesterday. Then you move your body, not a marathon, not a perfect workout, just move. You do jumping jacks. You stretch. You walk around the block. You signal to your body that today is different from yesterday, because today you're taking care of yourself first. Then you feed your mind something nutritious. You read one page from a book that challenges you to grow. You listen to something that inspires you to be better. You write down 3 things you're grateful for, not because gratitude is trendy, but because focusing on what you appreciate literally rewires your brain to notice more things to appreciate. Who here has ever started their day by immediately checking what everyone else is doing with their lives? Who has ever woken up and within 5 minutes found themselves comparing their real life to someone else's highlight reel? How did that make the rest of your day feel? When you start your day by focusing on other people's lives, you begin from a position of lack. When you start your day by focusing on your own growth, you begin from a position of abundance. This simple 30-minute routine creates a compound effect that most people never experience, because they never commit to consistency. Day 1 you feel slightly better. Day 7 you notice you're more focused. Day 30 people begin commenting on your energy. Day 90 you realize you've become someone you barely recognize. But here's what happens that most people don't expect. Life tests your commitment. Right when you start building momentum, obstacles appear, challenges arise, setbacks occur, difficulties multiply. This isn't punishment. This isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong. This is life's way of asking you one question. How serious are you about this transformation? Understand this pattern, because it governs everything. Every level of success you reach will be tested before you're allowed to keep it. Every new version of yourself you become will face challenges designed to see if you'll retreat to your old self, or fight to maintain your new self. The amateur looks at obstacles and sees reasons to quit. The professional looks at obstacles and sees opportunities to prove their commitment. The amateur seeks comfort and ease. The professional seeks challenge and growth. Winter always comes before spring. The harvest always requires work before the reward. Strength always develops under pressure, never in comfort. When someone treats you poorly now, how do you respond? When life doesn't go according to your plan, what's your default reaction? When you face criticism or rejection, or disappointment, where does your mind immediately go? Your responses to these situations reveal whether you're building strength or staying weak. Every challenge is either making you stronger or confirming your weakness. Every setback is either teaching you resilience or reinforcing your victim mentality. The person who has done the inner work responds to mistreatment with boundaries, not begging. They respond to setbacks with strategy, not surrender. They respond to criticism with self-reflection, not self-destruction. Here's how you build this kind of unshakable foundation. When something goes wrong, your first question isn't why me. Your first question is what can I learn from this? When someone treats you poorly, your first response isn't how can I fix this relationship? Your first response is how can I protect my peace? This requires developing what I call challenge immunity. Just like your body develops immunity to diseases through exposure and recovery, your mind develops immunity to life's inevitable difficulties through experience and proper response.
Most people try to avoid all challenges, which keeps them weak. Others allow challenges to destroy them, which keeps them broken. But the wise person learns to use challenges as fuel for growth, which keeps them strong. Every morning when you wake up, you're either advancing toward the person you want to become or retreating toward the person you used to be. There's no neutral, there's no staying the same. You're either growing or shrinking, improving or declining, building strength or losing it. The habits you practice daily are either investments in your future self or withdrawals from your potential.
Every choice you make is either adding to your personal power or subtracting from it. When you choose to exercise instead of staying in bed, you're making a deposit in your strength account. When you choose to read instead of scrolling mindlessly, you're making a deposit in your knowledge account. When you choose to face a difficult conversation instead of avoiding it, you're making a deposit in your courage account. But when you choose immediate comfort over long-term growth, you're making withdrawals. When you choose to complain instead of taking action, you're making withdrawal. When you choose to blame others instead of taking responsibility, you're making withdrawals. What's your daily account balance? Are you making more deposits or more withdrawals? The person who understands these principles begins to see opportunities everywhere others see only problems. They begin to recognize patterns that most people never notice. They begin to position themselves to take advantage of circumstances that would defeat others. When someone rejects them, they don't see it as evidence of their unworthiness. They see it as evidence that they weren't compatible anyway, and now they're free to find someone who is. When they lose a job, they don't see it as failure. They see it as redirection towards something better aligned with their growth. When they face criticism, they don't see it as attack. They see it as information that either helps them improve or confirms they're on the right path despite others' opinions. This shift in perspective isn't denial of reality. It's recognition of a higher reality. It's understanding that everything that happens to you is either a blessing or a lesson, and both are valuable. The person who has cultivated this foundation becomes magnetic, not because they try to attract others, but because they've become so focused on their own growth that they naturally attract people who value growth. Not because they try to be impressive, but because they've become so impressed with their own progress that others want to understand their secret. They become the kind of person who makes others think, I want what they have, but what they have isn't external. What they have is internal. What they have is unshakable confidence in their ability to handle whatever life brings. How do you know when you've built this foundation? When you can hear no without taking it personally. When you can face rejection without questioning your worth. When you can experience setbacks without losing faith in your future. When someone's poor treatment of you becomes information about them, not evidence about you. When their absence from your life creates space for your growth, not emptiness in your heart. When their opinion of you matters less than your opinion of yourself. This is when you become truly dangerous to anyone who wants to manipulate you. This is when you become truly attractive to anyone who values authenticity. This is when you become truly free from the opinions and behaviors of others. But even with this strong foundation, there are still internal enemies that can undermine everything you've built. There are still mental patterns that can sabotage your progress. There are still unconscious habits that can steal your power and return you to old ways of being. These internal enemies have names. They're called excuses, procrastination, and blame. They're the saws in your head that sound reasonable but lead to nowhere. They're the thoughts that feel protective but actually keep you small. Who here has ever said, I'll start Monday? Who has ever used the phrase when things calm down as a reason to postpone their growth? How many of you have caught yourselves saying, I don't have time, while spending hours doing things that don't matter? These aren't innocent delays. These are forms of self-sabotage disguised as reasonable explanations. They're ways your old self fights back against your new self. They're the unconscious mind's attempt to keep you safe by keeping you the same. The difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't circumstances. It's their relationship with excuses. Successful people hear the same excuses in their head that unsuccessful people do. The difference is what they do with those excuses. The unsuccessful person believes them and acts on them. The successful person recognizes them as resistance and acts despite them. When your alarm goes off in the morning and your brain says just 5 more minutes, what do? When you know you should have that difficult conversation and your mind says maybe tomorrow, how do you respond? When you see an opportunity that requires risk and your thoughts whisper, you're not ready, which do you follow? Your entire life is shaped by these small moments of choice between comfort and growth. Your future is determined by whether you listen to the befeh or the possibility. The mediocre person makes decisions based on how they feel in the moment. The excellent person makes decisions based on who they want to become. The mediocre person asks what's easy. The excellent person asks what's right. The mediocre person says I can't because the excellent person says I can if. The mediocre person focuses on problems. The excellent person focuses on solutions. Show me someone who constantly explains why they can't, and I'll show you someone whose life proves them right. Show me someone who constantly looks for ways they can, and I'll show you someone whose life reflects that possibility. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about productive thinking. This is about training your mind to look for solutions instead of dwelling on problems. This is about developing the mental habits that create results instead of the mental habits that create excuses. Here's how you eliminate these patterns permanently. Every time you catch yourself about to make an excuse, you stop and ask 3 questions. First, is this excuse helping me become who I want to be? Second, what would the person I'm becoming do in this situation? Third, what's one small action I can take right now despite how I feel? Then you take that action immediately, before your mind has time to generate more reasons why you shouldn't. This creates what I call the excellence habit. Instead of defaulting to comfort, you default to growth. Instead of choosing the easy path, you choose the path that builds character. Instead of doing what feels good, you do what creates good results. This habit becomes your daily operating system. You wake up and immediately do something that requires discipline. You face challenges and immediately look for the lesson. You encounter setbacks and immediately ask what you can learn. Your excellence protocol starts before you even get out of bed. While you're still lying there, you remind yourself of one thing you're grateful for, one thing you're excited about, and one thing you're committed to accomplishing that day. This takes 60 seconds and sets the tone for everything that follows. Then you get up immediately when your alarm sounds. No negotiation, no snooze button, no just 5 more minutes. You train your brain that when you make a decision, you honor it. You teach yourself that your word to yourself matters. You exercise your body for at least 20 minutes. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Not because someone is making you, but because you're making yourself stronger. Every rep, every step, every stretch is a vote for the person you're becoming. You feed your mind something valuable for at least 15 minutes. You read something that challenges your thinking. You listen to something that expands your perspective. You write something that clarifies your thoughts. You invest in your mental growth the same way you invest in your physical health. You complete one task that you've been avoiding. That phone call you need to make. That project you need to finish. That conversation you need to have. You do it first, while your willpower is strongest, before the day wears you down. You practice gratitude by writing down 3 specific things you appreciate about your life. Not generic things like my health or my family, but specific things like the way the morning light comes through my window, or how my coffee tastes when I'm fully present. Throughout the day, you hold yourself to a higher standard than others hold you to. You arrive early instead of on time. You exceed expectations instead of meeting them. You give more value than you receive. You become someone people can count on absolutely. When someone treats you poorly, you respond with class, not reaction. When faced with criticism, you look for truth without taking offense. When experiencing success, you stay humble. When facing failure, you extract the lesson and keep moving. You end each day by reviewing 3 questions. What did I do well today? What could I improve tomorrow? What am I most grateful for right now? This takes 5 minutes and ensures you're constantly learning and growing. This protocol creates compound results that most people never experience because they never commit to this level of consistency. Week 1, you feel more energetic. Month 1, you notice increased confidence. Month 3, others begin commenting on your transformation. Month 6, you realize you've become someone you respect. But here's what happens that transforms everything around you. When you change, everything around you changes. When you raise your standards, the people in your life either rise to meet them or reveal they don't belong in your life. When you become excellent, you attract excellence. The narcissist who once had power over you becomes irrelevant. Not because you're trying to hurt them, but because you've outgrown them. Not because you're seeking revenge, but because you've found something better yourself. People who once ignored you start paying attention. Not because you're trying to get their attention, but because excellence is magnetic. Not because you're chasing them, but because they recognize quality when they see it.
Opportunities that once seemed impossible start appearing, not because the world has changed, but because you've changed. Not because you're lucky, but because you're prepared. The person who follows this protocol becomes unforgettable for all the right reasons. They become someone others want to be around because they bring energy instead of draining. They become someone others trust because they do what they say they'll do. They become someone others respect because they respect themselves first. They don't need to announce their transformation because it's obvious in everything they do. They don't need to prove their worth because their actions demonstrate it daily. They don't need external validation because they've learned to validate themselves. This person walks into rooms differently. They speak with quiet confidence. They make eye contact without looking away. They shake hands firmly. They keep their word completely. They treat others with respect regardless of how they're treated in return. They become the kind of person that narcissists can't manipulate because they can't be flattered, can't be guilt-tripped, and can't be made to doubt their own reality. They become the kind of person that healthy people want to know because they're genuinely interesting, genuinely kind, and genuinely strong. When their former narcissist sees them now, they're confused. This isn't the same person they left. This isn't someone who needs. This isn't someone they can control. This person has become something they never expected, someone who is complete without them. That's when the narcissist realizes what they lost. That's when they understand the magnitude of their mistake. That's when they try to return. But by then it's too late. Not because you're being vindictive, but because you've discovered something infinitely more valuable than their approval, your own strength. You have everything you need to begin this transformation today. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need perfect circumstances. You don't need to wait until Monday or next month, or next year. You need to make a decision right now. Will you continue living as someone who reacts to what others do, or will you become someone who acts according to your own value? Will you keep being someone who waits for life to happen, or will you become someone who makes life happen? The choice you make in this moment will determine who you are a year from now. Choose excellence, choose growth, choose yourself. The world needs who you're capable of becoming, and it's time to show them who that is.